Okay, so let's get straight into this. We'll talk about a few essay questions and then we'll end uh, on that. So this file, basically, in this very tutorial, we are going to consider a few questions from gastrointestinal physiology, cardiovascular physiology, renal physiology, endocrine physiology, as well as the respiratory physiology. Okay, so when I explain where you won't be clear, please just raise up your hand. I will be able to attend to you. Okay, so that is how we are going to move. All right. All right. So the first question is about the steps involved in urine formation. Okay, the steps are involved in urine formation. That is the first question. So this, I'm sure you know that it comes from the topic renal physiology. Okay, so you discover that um, when we are talking about the formation of urine, generally we have three main major steps. Okay, we have three main major steps. We have what we call glomerular filtration, then we have what we call tubular reabsorption, and then we also have what we call tubular secretion, and then other books or other literature will also add excretion. Okay, so excretion is just the end product. Okay, that is after urine has already been formed. Okay, that is where excretion now comes in, where you're now expelling the urine which has been formed. Okay, and then not just that, in the process of urine formation, after after all this glomerular filtration has occurred, tubular reabsorption has occurred, um, what else? Tubular secretion has occurred. When this has occurred, you'll find that there is another process which has to do with concentrating the urine. Okay, so urine has to be concentrated before it is excreted. Okay, so those are just the things that you also need to take note of. So now the first step is glomerular filtration. So basically, this glomerular filtration is also referred to as ultrafiltration. Okay, it is also referred to as ultrafiltration. So please, this file, the content has been written in point form, but make sure in your assessment or in your exam, when writing the essay part, write in paragraph. Okay, unless you have been guided to write in point form by the examiner, or maybe the question has told you to just mention. Okay, as far as when you are told to describe, to explain, you have to write in paragraphs. Are we together? We are together, right? So you can just be responding very quickly so that I know that we are moving together. All right. Hopefully, I haven't lost anyone. Okay. So even just the thumbs will be helpful because due to network, so that we can move together. All right. So glomerular filtration. Remember, we said that when blood is entering the glomerulus, it enters via the afferent arterioles. Okay, the afferent arterioles. Then from there, after blood has entered, pressure will build up. Okay, pressure will build up basically through the glomerular capillary walls. Okay, pressure will build up basically through the glomerular capillary walls. Okay, then from there you will discover that after that has occurred, because filtration is all about removing certain contents or certain aspects in a particular fluid. Okay, so what happens is in glomerular filtration, water certain ions, glucose, amino acids, and basically just other small molecules. They are able to pass through the filtration slits. And then from there, uh, large molecules such as proteins, blood cells, they'll remain in the bloodstream. They won't be filtered. Then, after that filtration has occurred, we, the end product of filtration is what we call the filtrate. And that filtrate will be collected in the Bowman's capsule. Then um, that will say that the first step of urine formation is done. Okay, the first step is done. All right. So from there, the second step has to do with tubular reabsorption. Tubular reabsorption. So under tubular reabsorption, what just happens in this process is that you will find that since we had filtration earlier. So basically, some other components of which are very important, some other important aspects might have been filtered. Okay, so you'll find that there is supposed to be reabsorption of other. Um, uh, so here you discover that water and other substances will be transported back into the bloodstream from the renal tubules. Okay, so what happens is that this tubular reabsorption basically occurs usually in the proximal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle. Okay, tubular reabsorption occurs in the proximal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle. So these are some of the contents which are normally reabsorbed, okay, which are normally reabsorbed. And we mentioned earlier that when I'm talking about sites of reabsorption, I've talked about two major sites where these contents are reabsorbed: proximal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle. Okay, so you'll find that in the proximal convoluted tubule, the main contents which are reabsorbed back include glucose. Okay, glucose. You also have amino acids. Okay, you also have on the electrolytes, you have sodium, you have potassium, you also have calcium, which I have not added here on the slides, and also bicarbonate, including the chloride. Okay, and then uh, in the loop of Henle, what is reabsorbed there is just sodium and the chloride are the major components which are reabsorbed there. Okay, and then one thing that you need to take note of as far as tubular reabsorption is concerned is that there are certain regulating factors as far as tubular reabsorption is concerned, and those include um, glomerular-tubular balance. Okay, we'll talk about it. We'll find it in one of these questions as we are proceeding. You also have hormonal factors. Hormones also contribute to tubular reabsorption. Hormones such as ADH. Okay, remember, ADH plays a role in reabsorption of water. Okay, also nervous factors. So basically, these are some of the I just added this to just show you the mechanisms through which these particles or these components are reabsorbed. You have diffusion, active transport, and you have facilitated diffusion. Okay, then we have tubular secretion. Okay, we have tubular secretion, which is the third step in urine formation. So under tubular secretion, normally what happens is that substances will be secreted from the blood into the renal tubules. Okay, and this usually occurs in the distal convoluted tubule as well as the collecting duct. Okay, so be able to differentiate when you're talking about tubular reabsorption, it occurs in the proximal convoluted tubule as well as the loop of Henle. Then when we're talking about tubular secretion, it occurs in the distal convoluted tubule as well as the collecting duct. Okay, so the substances which are excreted in this step include hydrogen ions, potassium, you have urea, and you have creatinine, and also other waste products. Okay, so you'll find that in one of the MCQ questions, you might encounter this question. I'm sure in one of the files that we uploaded in the folder on our drive, there is such a question. Okay, so these substances are excreted. I mean, they are secreted. Okay, are we together? All right, thank you. So the last part now has to do with excretion. So please take note that after tubular secretion, I have said that before the urine has to be excreted, it needs to be concentrated. Okay, the urine has to be concentrated, and for it to be concentrated, there are a few um, aspects of urine concentration. Okay, so urine, you can either, before you excrete it, it can be either excreted as a dilute entity or urine, or you can excrete it as a concentrated urine. Okay, so it is on the part of forming concentrated urine where the process is a bit physiological and involving. Okay, but I won't dwell much on that because um, a tutorial video was already made, so go and watch it to really get the insight on that. Okay, so excretion, this is just urine formation. So the formation of urine has already been done, and then you discover that the urine will now flow through the collecting ducts into the renal pelvis. Okay, then urine is transported to the bladder, basically through the ureters. Okay, then it will be, the storage will be into the bladder until micturition. Okay, so micturition is just the other word for urination. Then after that, urine will be eliminated from the body. As simple as that. If it is an essay, you are done, you've written the key points. Okay, so I just included this part, key points to take note, that glomerular filtration creates the filtrate. Then tubular reabsorption conserves essential substances. Okay. Then tubular secretion eliminates the wastes. Then excretion removes the urine from the body. Are we together? Can we proceed? Can we proceed? On excretion, I'm there. All right, you are welcome. We can proceed. All right. Okay, so the next question has to do with respiration. Okay, this has to do with respiratory physiology. So the question is saying, um, describe or explain the mechanics of respiration in humans. Okay, the mechanics of respiration in humans. So this mechanics has to do with how the process of breathing occurs. Okay, not necessarily touching the the physiological aspect, which has to do with maybe the nerves, the what. No, but this one, the part for mechanics is just talking about the if I can use mechanics, if you can link it to physics, it has to do with things which have to do with maybe force, something like that. Okay, just to try to make sense. All right. So mechanics has to do with the movement of muscles and stuff like that. Okay. So remember, when you're talking about respiration, you have inspiration and expiration. Okay. So starting with inspiration, so some questions in line with the same mechanics, you can be told directly that in line with inspiration and expiration, or they can just leave it like that. So if you don't know that you're supposed to talk about inspiration and expiration, you start talking about unnecessary things. Okay. So inspiration, we already know. So during inspiration, the diaphragm basically contracts and it flattens downward. If you want, you can, as we are talking, you can be practicing this so that you can have first-hand information on yourself. You can use yourself as a specimen. Okay. So during inspiration, the diaphragm basically will contract, okay, and it will flatten downward. Then you discover that the rib cage will expand upward and um Namaka is practicing, yeah. So the rib cage will expand upward and outward. You can check that. And then you have intercostal muscles. So intercostal muscles, I'm sure your colleagues did an explanation when they were talking about this during your presentations. Okay. So the intercostal muscles will contract, then the thoracic cavity will increase in volume, and then air will enter the lungs. You are done. That is inspiration. Then you come to expiration. Basically, this is supposed to be the opposite of inspiration. As easy as that. You get 10 marks for free. This question is very easy. If you are to find it, this one is just to hammer. Okay. So expiration, the diaphragm will relax and it will return to a dome shape. Then the rib cage will descend and will go inward. Then intercostal muscles will relax. Then the thoracic cavity will decrease in volume. Okay. Then air will leave the lungs. Are we together? So now, according to physics, this relationship of expiration and inspiration, what do you think? How is the relationship between pressure and volume? Anyone? How is the relationship between pressure and volume as far as breathing is concerned, as far as mechanics is concerned? This question was asked during your presentations. What is the connection? What is the relationship between volume and pressure when you are breathing in, when you are breathing out? Are they directly proportional or they are inversely proportional? Okay, Namakara is saying inspiration adds pressure. Tionje is saying they are inversely proportional. Okay, so it is very important you know that concept, okay? So you'll find that pressure and volume, they are inversely proportional. Okay, so when pressure builds up, volume reduces when just like that. Okay, I don't know if I'm correct, if my physics serves me well. Okay, so I just had to put some additional information with regards to mechanisms. Okay, so the contraction of the diaphragm basically creates a negative pressure. Then, according to Boy's law, okay, according to Boy's law, lung volume increases as pressure decreases. Okay, this is what we've already established. This, okay, inversely proportional. Then we also have what we call Laplace's law. Laplace's law. I don't know if this was talked about, if at all it was mentioned either during your presentations or otherwise. Was the Laplace's law mentioned? It was not mentioned. Are you sure?
I'm sure I attended all the presentations until the last one.
All right. So when we talk about Laplace's Laplace's law. So there is another name of which this Laplace's law is called. Okay, so others say Laplace's law, others say Laplace's equation, others say the law of Laplace. Okay, but I don't want to dwell much on it because it is not that much important. Okay, it is very much related to physics. Okay, it is very much related to physics, but I'm pretty sure um, we'll tackle it as we progress. Okay, so that was on question 2. Can we now talk about question 3? Can we talk about question 3? All right, so question 3 wants us to talk about the physiology of neural control of the respiratory system. Okay, physiology of neural control of the respiratory system. So when we are talking about the neural control of the respiratory system, basically, you have to talk about. Remember, when you are writing these essays or short notes, you don't have to beat around the bush. Okay, you have to give crystal clear, brief explanations which carry weight, which have the key points which the marker or the examiner is looking for. Don't write a lot of things which don't even make sense. You end up writing a full page and someone just writes a half page or a quarter and they get 10 out of 10 and you get 2 out of 10. Okay, are we clear on that one? So when it comes to the regulation of the neural control of respiratory system, we have number one, we can talk about the central nervous system. Okay, so the central nervous system, basically, this one, it is the one which integrates respiratory control. Okay, so to integrate is just that if we can say that this one is the one which interprets everything and gives feedback on how the respiratory system should respond. Okay, of course, um, with other aspects working together. Okay, so under the central nervous system, we have the medulla oblongata. Okay, so the medulla oblongata, you'll find that it plays a role by generating respiratory rhythm. Okay, so this was explained. Some of these things were explained in your during your presentations by the group which was talking about the effects of exercise on the respiratory system. So we saw how those regulations were coming about. There was also a group which talked about specifically the neural control of the respiratory system. Okay, so you have the pons which regulate breathing pattern. Then you also have the higher brain centers which influence respiratory control. And then we have the peripheral nervous system. So this peripheral nervous system basically just transmits information to and from the central nervous system. Okay, so peripheral nervous system include, remember, it transmits information from to and from the central nervous system. Under the peripheral nervous system, we have components such as chemoreceptors. Okay, so the chemoreceptors, these are, are detectors, or these are receptors which detect changes or fluctuations in partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, including the levels of pH. Okay, and we also have baroreceptors which just detect blood pressure. Okay, then you have the pulmonary receptors which detect lung inflation or deflation. Okay, so these are the key aspects as far as you are talking about the neural control of the respiratory system. Okay, you should be able to understand them. These which I've written here, or the things which I've talked about, they are just key points that you should not miss as far as your explanation is concerned with the neural control of the respiratory system. Okay, these are key factors. All right, I should repeat on the peripheral nervous system. So I'm saying that under the peripheral nervous system, the peripheral nervous system basically transmits information to and from the central nervous system. So the components which are under the peripheral nervous system include chemoreceptors. Okay, so chemoreceptors are there to detect changes um, in partial pressures of oxygen, carbon dioxide, including pH. Okay, so what happens is that since we're talking about the neural control of the respiratory system, that means these chemoreceptors, when they detect a change, they will um, they will send to the peripheral nervous system, which will take the information and send it to the central nervous system, and the central nervous system will integrate that information and give a feedback on how the respiratory system should adjust itself or should respond to what is happening. Okay, and then the baroreceptors are there to detect changes in blood pressure. Okay, is that okay now? All right, thank you. Okay, so this is just the neural control, just summarized. Okay, I've just summarized it here. Okay, that we have respiratory rhythm generation. All this I've already summarized. Okay, so if you followed everything that is here is what is here. Okay, you've seen how simple it is to write these short notes or essays. You just need to know the key points that you're supposed to talk about. Okay, you can use any kind of English, as but provided you don't leave out the key factors. Okay, that is how you pass as far as essays are concerned. I'm not saying these are the questions which are coming, but I'm giving you a guide on how you're supposed to answer the essay part or the short notes. Is that clear? All right, so I just included some of the things. You'll find them in the file as I will share the file. Okay, I've just included even clinical correlation. I'm not saying that these things need to be added. Please, this question was just talking about something. I'm sure you've seen um, where the question has ended. Starting from here, this is just some of the information to just help you with understanding, okay, and to add some information, okay. So, question 4 is saying explain the cardiac pacemaker cells membrane, explain the cardiac pacemaker cells membrane potentials, rhythmic discharge. Okay, these are so this question is coming from which topic? Which topic is this question coming from? Yeah, so all of you are correct. This topic is coming from cardiovascular system or cardiovascular physiology. All right, so when you are talking about pacemaker cell, this question, if you remember very well, there was that curve that we drew when we are looking at cardiovascular physiology. Who remembers that curve? There is that graph, yeah, that graph that we drew. That graph, that is where this essay question is coming from. Okay, this is where this essay question is coming from. That graph, which was coming something like this, yeah, something like that. This is where this essay is coming from. So if you really understood what was taught, and I remember very well, I'm the one who taught cardiovascular physiology. So if you understood that graph very well, then you are able to answer this question, because what is needed here is just what is on this graph. In other words, you just have to get the information with regards to this graph and just put it in writing, in paragraph. Simple, right? So, but you'd find that if this question was to hit you without you knowing that this is what you're supposed to talk about, you would have talked about other things which which are very far from the graph. Am I lying? So that is what we're supposed to talk about on this question. Okay. So now, when we talk about the cardiac pacemaker cells, these cardiac pacemaker cells are also known as uh, sinoatrial node cells. Okay, they are the ones which generate rhythmic electrical impulses which control our heartbeat. Okay, so just below here is a thorough elucidation on the rhythmic, on the membrane potential and the rhythmic discharge. Okay, so as far as membrane potential phases are concerned, we have, I started with phase 4. Okay, here I started with phase 4. Okay, so you can either put it as phase 4 or phase 1, because if we move it with phase 1, no, no, not phase 1, but it's supposed to be phase 4, yeah. Okay, because we have this phase here, then we have phase 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So phase 4 is here. Okay, this is what phase 4 is. So as far as phase 4 is concerned, this is the resting part, okay, of phase 4. Okay, so that is phase 4. So, and on phase 4, the membrane potential, remember, is negative 55 to negative 60. That is the membrane potential of the cardiac pacemaker cells. Okay, so here what happens is that the potassium channels are open, allowing potassium efflux. Okay, and the sodium channels are closed. For the heart, if you put negative 90, it will be incorrect. Okay, so um when we talk about membrane potentials, remember we have different cells. Okay, are we together? We have different cells. Yeah, we have different cells, so make sure you just know um the membrane potential of each cell, or the resting membrane potential of each cell. All those things are there in the cardiovascular physiology lecture. Okay, so I won't dwell much on that. All right, so just know specifically where each belongs. Okay, Yeah, I won't dwell on that. All right, so then we have phase zero. So phase zero is the one which is here. Okay, so phase zero is normally there. So on phase zero, what happens is that you'll find that the membrane potential will be rapidly depolarized. Okay, membrane potential will rapidly depolarize to positive 20 millivolts. Okay, positive 20 millivolts. And then when that happens, you'll find that there will be the rapid opening of the fast sodium channels. Remember the word rapid or fast sodium channels, okay, which will bring about the rapid influx of sodium, okay. Remember, when sodium is entering, it brings about depolarization, okay. So that is with regards to phase zero, which is depolarization, okay. This one, depolarization. I don't have to start explaining the terms. By now, you are experts. Okay, so phase one, okay, phase one is supposed to be, because after depolarization we need repolarization. So phase one, I'm sure, it's supposed to be here. Okay, so on phase one we have what we call the early or initial repolarization. Early or initial repolarization. Okay, so under this, you'll find that the membrane potential will repolarize to positive 30 millivolts. And then what happens? This repolarization is as a result of the potassium channels, which will open, okay, and will allow potassium efflux. Then what will happen here is that those fast sodium channels, remember we said in the previous one, in the, is it the depolarization? Yeah, in the depolarization we said that there was the opening of the rapid sodium channels. Okay, so under early repolarization, those fast sodium channels will close, and there will be the opening of the slow sodium channels. Okay, are we together? All right. So we come to phase two. So phase two is the plateau phase. Okay. This phase, okay, the plateau, that is phase two. Okay. The plateau, the plateau is basically the uh the third phase. Okay, that is phase two. Yeah, phase two. So the plateau. So on the plateau there, you need to understand that the membrane potential will still be maintained, okay? The membrane potential will be maintained. That is positive 30 millivolts. But what will happen is that there will be the opening of the calcium channels. So when those calcium channels have been opened, what will happen is they will be kept open for a long period of time. And when they have been open for a long period of time, there will be the influx of calcium ions, okay? That is basically phase two. Then we have phase three. So phase three has to do with the final repolarization. Okay, this is where phase three is. Okay, so there we are going to have final repolarization. So this final repolarization, you'll find that the membrane potential will repolarize back to the initial um, uh, part. Okay, which is negative 55 to negative 60 millivolts. So what will happen is that the potassium channels here will dominate, allowing the efflux of potassium ions. Remember that potassium usually, when it is inside, it is bound to negative ions, okay, or to negative um, entities. So what happens is when potassium is leaving the cell, those negative ions will remain unoccupied. And when they remain unoccupied, repolarization, or the cell will become more negative, because there will only be the 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 ions which will be dominating there are the negative ions, because potassium is a looping, is leaving, okay, leaving those negative ions unoccupied. Are we good? Okay. So that was with regards to um, the action potentials. Now, when we talk about the rhythmic discharge mechanism, okay, rhythmic discharge mechanism, I will be quick on this one. We have, so this is one essay. Please, I'm saying that I'm just giving you the key points that you should not forget to write. I'm showing you how to write an essay by including the necessary components. Okay, so the rhythmic discharge mechanism. So you'll find that we have spontaneous depolarization. Okay, so you find that the pacemaker cells will slowly depolarize uh, as a result of number one, the inward sodium leak. Then we have the outward potassium leak. Okay. Then when you go so much in physiology, we also have what we call the hyperpolarization activated cyclic nucleotide gated channels. Okay. But this one, um, you can forget about it a little bit. Okay, but if you are good at remembering, you can also add it. Okay, but these are the most common, the ones which are normally recognized by a lot of students. Okay, then we have threshold potential. So you find that when the membrane potential reaches negative 55 millivolts, calcium channels will have to open. So when the calcium channels open are the ones which are going to trigger phase zero. Okay, then we are going to have an action potential. So the action potential will be as a result of the rapid depolarization, which is the one that generates the action potential. Then number four, we have what we call refractory period. Okay, so what happens is that the cell will always remain in the refractory period. That is during phase one to phase three. Okay, so what this means is that the cell will enter a phase where it won't be able to generate another action potential. Okay, and then the cycle will repeat. Okay, are we together? All right, thank you very much.